Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canada Truth Channel, where Canada, the illusion of freedom, system of control is exposed. Today's video, we're going to hear from Walter Cool, who was a member of parliament in the Jasper Edson riding between 1935 and 1949. In 1945, on November 8th, Walter Cool made this speech in the House of Commons, which I've covered previously, but it's more relevant than ever today given the Alberta circumstances. Once again, Walter Cool, the original Alberta patriot, who tried his entire career to settle the constitutional issues in Canada, and he was mocked by Parliament because they didn't want to lose their paychecks, their pensions, and their ability to rape, pillage, and plunder the people and resources of Canada. Enough said. Let's hear from Walter Cool himself. I'm going to leave this blue because it's easier to read. There is probably no political issue in Canada on which there is more lack of information and more misinformation than on the constitutional question. The stalemate and the impasse which the governing authorities in Canada have reached on this question seem to indicate that there is and has been something very fundamentally awry in Canada's constitutional history. Boy, is that a true statement, especially the misinformation part. I would call it deliberate deception and fraud, but let's move on. For almost half a century, this controversy has been raging without a satisfactory solution having been arrived at. Many Canadians, myself included, have had enough of this bickering between politicians and are determined to do something to bring this internecine strife to an end. I second that. More important than ever today, I might add, the purpose of this booklet is to indicate in some measure what I, as a member of the House of Commons and as a private citizen, have attempted to bring order out of the constitutional chaos in which Canada finds herself. Democracy is successful only in proportion to the knowledge which people have with respect to their rights and privileges. It is my hope that the information contained in this brochure will assist Canadians to that end. It is my hope too. That's why I'm bringing you this information, ladies and gentlemen. Immediately following the recent Quebec election, I sent to Mr. Rene Levesque a personal letter in which I indicated my conception of the constitutional rights which the provinces of Canada enjoy at the moment. At the conclusion of this booklet will be found a reproduction of this letter. Included with this letter was the additional material found in this booklet. A copy of my letter to Mr. Levesque, along with the copies of the additional material, were subsequently mailed to each of the premiers of the provinces of Canada. I desire to express my gratitude to Mr. R. Rogers Smith, who, as my private tutor for almost the entire 14 years during which I served as a member of the House of Commons, brought to my attention facts from statutes at large, from the archives, and from original historical sources, the material upon which this brochure is based. Walter Cool. And this brochure is called Canada, a Country Without a Constitution, a factual examination of the constitutional problem, written by Walter Cool and published in 1977. And right on the title in the front page, it is therefore easy to see why Canada is not a confederation, Dr. Maurice Oliver, Joint Law Clerk of the House of Commons, before Special Committee on the British North America Act 1935, which Russell Rogers Smith was also part of. I have always contended, for reasons too long to enumerate here, that it is Canada has not become either a confederation or a federal union. Dr. Oliver once again to a personal letter to Walter Cool. This is a letter from the Clerk of the House of Commons of Canada, Dr. Bouchain, to Walter Cool. Dear Mr. Cool, I see you are still forming a good policy. The idea is progressing. The only thing wrong with it is that it has to be proposed by a cabinet minister. Dr. Bouchain. This is a copy of a personal note sent to me by Dr. Bouchain following a speech I made on Canadian constitutional problems in 1940. So, Walter Cool tried in 1940. There was attempts in 1935, and all were dismissed because they did not want to lose their jobs. Here is the letter that Walter Cool sent to Rene Levesque. Dear Mr. Levesque, congratulations on your magnificent personal victory and that of your party Quebecois in the recent Quebec election. As a student of Canadian constitutional history and of Canadian constitutional problems for some 40 years, I am tremendously interested in the constitutional implications of your recent political victory. For 14 years, from 1935 to 1949, it was my privilege to serve as a member of the House of Commons from the province of Alberta. The withholding of assent to some Alberta legislation in those years by the Lieutenant Governor and the disallowance of other Alberta legislation by the people at Ottawa set me to investigate how these things could be. I was assisted in my studies by R. Rogers Smith, who was personally acquainted with a one-time private secretary to John A. Macdonald at the time when the BNA Act was being enacted. Through this source, I have become acquainted with much more information concerning the history of the BNA Act, which is not found in the textbooks. For good reason, because it's fraud. All this information has led me to the conclusion that the existing constitutional circumstances are shocking to the point of unbelief. However, in my considered opinion, after 40 years of intensive study, these existing constitutional circumstances are of such a nature that they can be of extreme advantage to you in governing your province. Same thing with Alberta right now. I'm enclosing copies of some of the addresses which I delivered in the House of Commons on the subject, as well as copies of a pamphlet by Mr. Smith dealing with the same subject. If you have not already been made acquainted with this material, I trust it will prove enlightening and helpful to you in the constitutional considerations you are obviously going to become involved in. Although the enclosed material should give you a clear outline of what I conceive to be your present standing constitutionally as a province, I would like to give you a brief summary of what I believe to be your present position. So far as separation is concerned, rather than it being necessary to seek separation rights through a referendum, the province of Quebec is already completely constitutionally separated from the rest of Canada. This is equally true for every province in Canada, and has been so since December 11th, 1931, through the Statute of Westminster. How can you be divorced if you've never been married? Good question, Alberta. In other words, ever since the enactment of the Statute of Westminster in 1931 by the British government, each of the provinces of Canada have been a completely sovereign and independent state, and because the provinces have signed nothing since then constituting a federal union and a federal government, and because no such has been ratified by the people of Canada, the provinces still enjoy the status of sovereignty and are privileged to use it in any way they see fit. I can hear people yelling at me out there already. What about the Canada Act? What about the Charter on Rights and Freedoms? Well, I've covered that before. No contract can stand on fraud. No one involved had any lawful authority to write anything on behalf of the people of Canada, period. And it was never ratified by the people of Canada. Did you vote on it? Was there a referendum on it? No, there wasn't. As you will observe from the enclosed addresses, I quote eminent Canadian constitutional authorities as suggesting that the only logical solution to the existing constitutional circumstances is drafting and the adoption of a proper federal constitution in which the provinces can reserve for themselves any and all powers necessary to enable them to govern their provinces successfully. I'm sure you can appreciate that if this were done, you could solve your economic and other problems in Quebec without resorting to separation. I feel sure that having the ability to solve your problems and still remain constitutionally part of the country of Canada would be much more satisfactory to your supporters as well as to the others within your province. The following is a summary of the reasons for the things I have just stated. Number one, at the time of Confederation movement in Canada, the provinces of Canada, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick desired to form a federal union. The Quebec resolutions of 1864 provided for a federal union. The bill drafted by the Canadian delegates at the London Conference in 1866 also provided for a federal union. The colonial office of the Imperial Parliament was not disposed to grant the provinces of Canada their request for a federal union. The British North America Act, enacted by the Imperial Parliament, carried out neither the spirit nor the terms of the Quebec resolutions. Canada did not become a federal union or a confederation under the British North America Act, but rather a united colony. The privileges of federation, therefore, was still a future privilege for the provinces of Canada. The Parliament of Canada did not become the Government of Canada, much less a federal government. It became merely the central legislature of a united colony, the legislative body whose only power was that of aiding and advising the Governor General as agent of the Imperial Parliament. The British North America Act, as enacted by the Imperial Parliament, was not a constitution, but merely an act of the Imperial Parliament which united 4 colonies in Canada into one colony, with the supreme authority still remaining in the hands of the British government. The privilege of federating became realizable for the province of Canada only through the enactment of the Statute of Westminster on December 11, 1931. Through this statute, the Imperial Parliament relinquished to the people of Canada their sovereign rights and through them to their provincial governments as their most direct agents. Since December 11, 1931, the provinces of Canada have not acted on their newly acquired status in the forming of a federal union nor have the people of Canada ratified a constitution. Therefore, the original proposition, namely, that all power to govern in Canada resides at the moment with the provinces of Canada, and all power legally remains there until such a time as the provinces sign an agreement and ratify a constitution whereby they may delegate such powers as they wish to a central government of their own creation. In the meantime, Canada exists as 10 political units without political superior. Excuse me. Should you consider that there is merit in the information which I have given you, I would be very happy to meet you personally to discuss in greater depth the implications of the unprecedented constitutional circumstances prevailing in Canada. So I've covered the Governor General fraud in Exposed, the Governor General fraud. I've covered the Statute of Westminster in several recent videos. I'll put the links at the end of the video. But these are facts, ladies and gentlemen, and we've been lied to for generations so the people in Ottawa could keep their power and steal from us. And that's the facts. Like it or not, until we accept these facts, nothing is going to change. Please, I encourage everyone to use the links I provide and download this pamphlet. And just as a reminder, also go to this website and read the bullshit that the Canadian government tries to tell us, why they didn't tell us, and why the provinces didn't exercise its full autonomy. Not Canada, the provinces. It says specifically in the Statute of Westminster, Canada and the provinces and the provincial legislatures. It's facts in law. Please review this information for yourself and share it with others. Thanks for watching.